Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another Insight series. How's everybody doing? I've seen some cool messages in the chat so far, just to kind of catch up and find out how it's going. I'm based in Cape Town. My name is Danilo, and I'm the MC today for the Insight series. And I can tell you it's pretty chilly outside. I think it's the first time Cape Townians always complain about things moving beyond or below that 10-degree mark. It's the first time we've hit that sort of 9-degree mark in our winter season. But I hope that you're nice and warm. There's a good cup of coffee in hand, or tea, or something much stronger than that, as us digital marketers continue to navigate these ever-changing dynamics of our industry. The IAB is incredibly proud of and excited by these Insight series, an opportunity for us as an industry to come together around some of the most important topics and challenges we face as an industry and to solve them together. So if you are, or your company is currently an IAB member, we're very grateful to have you part of our ecosystem. And I don't know if many of you know this, but these Insight series happen monthly. We're always covering some really big topics, and we have been doing so for a number of years. Since COVID, really, we've moved the Insight series into these webinars sort of monthly, a chance for you and your teams to keep leveling up and growing their skill sets. And if perhaps you've missed some of our previous episodes, but want to use them as training material, or perhaps want to revisit some of the biggest topics we've had around AI, influencer marketing, digital content, and now we're focusing quite a lot on TrustList and programmatic ad buying, then you can go and revisit the full episodes of the Insight series. But they are hidden behind our member paywall. So obviously, if you are a member of the IAB, you get access to a portal. All of these episodes in high fidelity, in full content value, are available to you on the portal. So I do encourage members of the IAB to go and find those details on the portal. And if you don't know where to find them, please just do reach out to the IAB. I'm sure we can send some details in the chat at some point throughout the webinar today. Reach out to somebody at the IAB to try and get access to those episodes on the portal. Some really rich insights have come through from these Insight series, and it's been my great honor and privilege to learn across the industry's best of the best in their field. So yeah, please, if you are an IB member, do go check that out. And if you're not a member, obviously the encouragement would be to become a member. If you want access to all of these white papers and these insights, and to make sure that you get access to the best of our industry, I would really recommend that you do become an IAB member. Again, please do reach out to the team at the IAB if you'd like to find out more details. So I see we have some incredible guests with us in the room today, and our attendee list is filled with the country's best agencies and publishers. As our programmatic and media buying world is changing so rapidly, one of the questions we've got to ask ourselves is how are we going to stay abreast of all of these changes? Not only are they technological, not only is AI, personalization, and scale a conversation we're having here at the IAB, but also talking about trust and fake news on the internet with our publishing environments in the country. A lot of our publishers are on the call today, so a big welcome to all of you. As you're trying to attract more of South Africa's digital media spend, this is the conversation to invest our energy and time into. The title is Securing the Digital Ad Ecosystem, TrustList South Africa, and Fake News. We're going to be launching something groundbreaking today to assist both publishers and brands, and I guess the media buyers who buy on behalf of brands, to ensure that they are not wasting their ad spend and ensuring that we can continue to build trust in this digital ecosystem. I'm very, very excited about it. There's a lot of tech tax and proliferation around fake news websites as well. And so this session is particularly exciting because it marks that official launch that I mentioned of TrustList South Africa. And I'm looking forward to sharing some more insights with you later. So for the next hour, this is the place to be for those looking to maximize your return on your investment and secure those client budgets. To do that, we have an incredible lineup of experts joining us today, all just exceptional in their own field. And I say this with true honesty. I've had a chance in the background in preparation for today to spend some time with each of them. And boy, are they smart people. So I hope that you're looking forward to some of the insights. Geoff Cohen will be joining us, who's a partner at dYdX. He's going to share some more insights with us about his experience from the e-commerce world. Most of you will know him previously from his role as CEO of 24.com. He'll then be joined by Chris Roper, who's a senior strategist at Code for Africa. He's going to tell us a little bit more about his experience so far as a leading voice in the media technology space. He's going to delve into the critical topic of trust markers in the media ecosystem and how we can effectively combat disinformation. And looking forward to his insights. And then the big panel discussion ensues. Joining us on the panel discussion today will be one of the experts you guys have seen a number of times in our industry, the MD of Mindshare South Africa, Adrian Naidoo, will be joining us in our panel discussion towards the end of our session. And so we've got everybody here represented, the technological partners who are trying to assist the media landscape, the media buyers, and hopefully a lot of our brands are in the room as well too. And if you'd like to ask our panel discussion any of your technical or very sort of important questions, the Q&A section is right at the bottom of your screen. So please just do go find it. It's the separate button. There's two. One says chat. This is where we get to chat and talk to each other. The other is the Q&A box, where you get to ask all your questions. Please do post them in throughout the session today, and I will prioritize your questions over the panel discussion questions that we've got sort of designed for today. So it's going to be an impactful one, and I see that our team are ready to rock and roll. Geoff is very excited to jump into the topic for today. Geoff's going to provide us with an in-depth look at TrustList as a project, explaining how it identifies real audiences and contextually relevant websites, and crucially, how it helps us reclaim those rands lost to inefficiency and questionable sites. Geoff obviously has had an incredible industry experience so far, and I'm really inspired by his background. Like I said, you'll know him previously as the CEO of 24.com, Africa's largest digital media and marketplace company. Geoff currently, his work centers on product development, investment advisory, and strategic consulting. He has a long history in digital media and was a founding member of the IAB in South Africa, as well as a past judge for the prestigious IAB Bookmark Awards, which a lot of you are duly waiting for the results of your submissions for as well. Geoff, welcome. Good morning. How are you? What is your drink of choice, coffee, or are you not really a caffeinated fan?
I'm a deeply, deeply caffeinated fan. I am an addict of multiple substances. So
I love it. As long as it's not fake news that's your addiction, then we should be good.
It's basically screen addiction.
Yeah, same thing. So Geoff, I want to hand the floor over to you. Sorry, because of the delay in our ecosystem. I'll hand the floor over to you to talk us through the TrustList project and all the exciting work that you guys are working on. The floor's yours.
Thanks so much. Folks, thanks so much for making the time to come and listen to Chris and I, and to Adrian as well. Just a quick early admission, I'm slightly under the weather. So if I have the charisma of a take-a-lot box, it's not you, it's very definitely me, but it's also very definitely not the subject material. So I ask for your patience and your kindness while I wave through a field of drugs in my mind to be able to do this. And I hope that we can land something like pretty special, because this is a big issue, right? For us, TrustList, we think, is a bit of a revolutionary approach to digital advertising safety. It's a partnership that we launched with Code for Africa, ourselves as dYdX and the IAB. And really what we want to do is we want to address like what we think is a super critical part of ensuring that we have a clean, effective, and productive media ecosystem. Right now, there's a $13 billion problem in programmatic supply chain when it comes to how digital media is distributed. And, you know, Chris and I both feel like incredibly strongly about this, and I'm sure many of the publishers in the call feel like naturally the same way. You know, we have to create a cleaner internet ecosystem, and we've got to starve out bad actors who are effectively removing a huge amount of investment from brands by being bad actors in the space. So let's talk a little bit about this, right? So this isn't like this isn't a problem that is undocumented. The Association of National Advertisers in the States has put a figure of about $13 billion annually that flows to either made-for-advertising sites or misinformation websites, or sites that participate actively in ad fraud. You know, so that's about 21% of total global impressions, 15% of total ad spend. In our analysis, in our pilot projects, we're seeing something like 30% of the impressions we've tested, and it was a pretty big pilot study that we did, went to unsafe destinations, right? So these are with brands that are already subscribing to brand safety tools, have vendors on site that are acting in their best interests. And that's pretty frightening, right? So what that effectively means is 30% of your media investment is not working effectively, or is working against your brand's intentions and opening it up to significant amounts of risk, which nobody particularly wants. So we're in a lose-lose situation. Like a third of the spend is going to bad places. That spend that could have been supplying very critical revenue to media destinations in South Africa is not going there. And brands are putting themselves at risk. This is just a quick slideshow, just like this was from yesterday. So just a quick note around this. for those of you who are interested in this kind of space, News24 did a really good piece tracking down some misinformation that was distributed over WhatsApp and some of the socials, claiming that there was going to be a congestion tax in Cape Town, which, if anybody lives in Cape Town, you would know would drive people up the wall. And it's like fear, loathing, screaming, rioting at the mere thought of it. Obviously, this was fake news. And what was interesting about this was just what kind of ads were being shown through programmatic display on these different websites. So you can see, like, these are issues that are happening right now. They're happening right now across the board. Yeah. So real issue, real loss to brands, real potential brand issues and brand safety. Yeah. So from a South African perspective, we're reversing out like these numbers based on the IAB spend reports, just to get to like kind of a round figure, just to get an idea of how big is the problem really for South Africa. Like, you know, so we talk about the global issue. What is the local impact of that issue? So when we reverse out the data that we have off the back of the pilot projects that we ran with a number of pretty large brands in South Africa, we kind of get to a number which says that there's probably about 400 million rand of the 1.5 billion rand that is invested in programmatic display that is going to bad places, right? And those bad places are, you know, either sites that are actively participating in ad fraud, sites that are distributing misinformation, sites that are creating like kind of made for advertising destinations, which has absolutely no real audience engagement whatsoever. And you have to put that in comparison with what the total take is for digital media businesses in South Africa. That's about 200 million, right? So 2x investment is going to destinations which is giving no benefit to brands, which is putting them at risk, okay? Which could be funding a deeply poverty-stricken and also genuinely incredibly important sector of the South African economy. This is stuff that we need to fix. The graph on the right here just identifies like, I'm trying to land like kind of some of the points around this, which is that if we look at the total investment that starts in your digital supply chain. So this is from a programmatic supply chain study that was done in the UK, just looking at like how much money comes into the system and how much money like ends up, right? So for every 1 rand that enters into the supply chain, notionally a media owner, an actual media practitioner, will probably get about 40% of that. Once you start taking, and that's like at a maximum cohort, right? Once you start reversing out the impact of made for advertising, ad fraud, misinformation, disinformation, that kind of drops down to 28 cents. So a brand is investing 1 rand, a media practitioner is getting 28 cents. Right. In between, there are a number of taxes that are being taken off the top, and these are legitimate, right? These are legitimate vendors providing a legitimate service to the brands. And the question we've got to ask ourselves is, at that 25% mark, you know, for data targeting and verification, like, is that really genuinely delivering value for the brands? And is there a way that we can start clawing that back? 2 things at the same time. 1, can we start reducing that tax? And 2, can we increase the ratio of working media for the brands that are investing in these channels? So traditional brand safety, I think, kind of misses the mark right now, and misses the mark for a number of different reasons. I think the key one right now is that the scale of AI, like slop content generation, is hitting a tipping point, right? Previously, the cost of being able to create media was reasonably high. You know, you actually required a human to cut and paste and make up facts and like kind of publish them to a fake website. And, you know, you need a lot of folks to do it. We are, as anybody who is aware in the year of our Lord 2025, like AI has changed that entirely, right? So the opportunity to create, you know, reams and reams of content, like, you know, copies of sites at scale is, you know, beyond imagining right now. So we've basically got a volume problem that's growing. And with that volume problem, the kind of keyword blocking processes, the traditional brand safety tactics that are being used by the vendors in the market right now aren't catching up with the scale of innovation with the folks that are trying to effectively defraud brands and agencies of their investments. So, you know, and a lot of the reason behind that is that the analysis is kind of surface level only, right? And the net result of it is, as I showed you on the previous slide, there are a bunch of these brands with, you know, probably very good vendors behind them. And their ads are still being shown on places where they shouldn't be shown, and they're still funding destinations that they shouldn't be funding, which is a problem. So our question is, you know, like, instead of looking at the content itself from a brand safety perspective, which is usually what you do in a pre-bid or post-bid environment, you know, you'd sit there and say, like, should this ad have been shown on this URL? And like the question is this content safe? We've taken an approach which says, is this actually, like, looking at the entirety of the operation, is this a legitimate media operation with legitimate content that goes with it? And our hypothesis, like when we first started the TrustList project with Code for Africa, was really to explore that, to be able to say, can we leverage AI to understand both the context of where an ad was shown, like the context of the content that an ad was shown against, as well as the technology, as well as the entire structure of the ownership of that media destination, whether it's like, you know, a website that has to do with, you know, notionally like recipes or general news. Can we get a better identity of this organization, and can we start tracking back the interlinked ownership circles between these sites so that we can stop the commercialization of this kind of ad fraud and made for advertising, like kind of clickbait. And we ran some early tests, and we were very pleased with results. We were showing like kind of some really good data that came out of it. Where we are now, like we wind the clock forward after about an 18-month development cycle, we're in a space where we've solidified our data processing flow into something that we feel is quite strong. So we start screening log level data from participating brands. They supply us the data. We go through, we check against their domain data. We start checking the traffic sourcing. We start running an analysis of the actual code that is being presented, both at the page level and at the total site level. We start doing some technical verifications around that, and we start drawing some matching points around, you know, domain age, inbound referrals, you know, ads.txt. We start checking the actual code completion on each one of the pages to be able to identify the ad calls that are being made and which networks are being used, and identifying what are the rings of ownership again around that. We start building up a layer of content analysis, not just on the content where the ad was shown, but across the site as a whole, to be able to understand what the publishing business is behind it, and whether it's good or bad. And then we start building out an understanding of, you know, if you're a media owner, whether you are doing this as an individual blog, or whether you're running a car review site, or whether you're running a general news site, you know, do you have the correct, or are there markers that show that you are investing in creating a media environment that is good for consumers, so good for readers, good for viewers, whatever the case may be? Do you have the right policies? Do you have a process around attribution? Or, you know, can you be contacted if there's an issue? All of these things are flags that we feel are important to be able to identify what is a good media player and what is a bad media player. So our idea, like kind of off the back of this, is really saying, like, if we could do this, could we create an open source repository of good and bad actors, provided at the lowest possible cost for the entire industry, through an open source and not-for-profit vehicle that actually reduces waste and directs investment to the right place? And this is kind of the key thing to land. Like, TrustList is a partnership between obviously ourselves and Code for Africa and IAB. But the purpose behind this is not to inject a new vendor into the ad ecosystem or into the digital media ecosystem. The point about this project is really to work with the industry, right, to be able to create a low-cost, open-sourced infrastructure that brands and agencies can check against to ensure that their investment is going to a good, like kind of good destination, and at the same time engage with the digital media environment in South Africa to ensure that they are following the best practices possible, to be able to show that they have all of the governance steps in place, that they can be deemed as, you know, as a notionally like kind of as a good site. Yeah. So how do we do this? I'm basically, we've got a level of LLM integrations where we built out a series of custom interaction points with a variety of providers and some custom libraries to be able to identify misinformation. So, we are now able to, in those previous examples of the misinformation that was distributed about the Cape Town congestion, we would have picked that up immediately, right? And we try and take this in a multi-dimensional scoring approach. So we look at the technical issues around a website. So we start looking at the code. We start looking at for markers of fraud. We start looking at markers of behaviors which could, point to you as a media site owner. Trying to profit off misinformation or disinformation. We start looking at the content. So what does the content mean? What is the context around it? Is the content itself like notionally true? Like, is there like some sense that what is being published is not made up? Has it been generated by an AI? Has it been plagiarized from somewhere else? Is there some sense of investment behind what's being published to the internet? Okay. And then a little bit of the stuff that I think Chris will start talking about, which is what is your editorial focus? Yeah. So like, how many editorial policies do you have? What does that kind of look like? We start processing the stuff in real time, and we build a kind of a looping framework that is able to identify trends between different types of publishers. And most critically, we start leveraging a network effect. Our ideal scenario is one in which the entire industry participates in this, where we all participate, like our anonymized, like blog level data, to be able to create a resource for the entire industry so that the entire industry benefits from our shared learnings in a way that drops costs for everyone, but also increases efficacy for the entire ecosystem. So what have we done so far? We've analyzed in our pilot projects with a number of large South African brands. We've analyzed about 26,000 websites, more than 8 million different ad impressions. And the results were pretty frightening, right? So about 40% of that off the back of our analysis was listed as wasted or high-risk investments, right? So high-risk investments were destinations where, on our analysis, we would look at this and go, the ownership data is not clear. There are signs from the content that this is being driven by misinformation or disinformation. The content itself is being plagiarized or has been written by AI. The content is clearly mismatched between the investment destination and or the investment source from the brand. Like, there's no applicable kind of linkage between the two. Or there are signs that the destination where this ad is being shown up has all of the markers of somebody who is trying to profit from ad fraud. And the output, like even at this kind of early stage, means that anybody who is participating at this stage can actually do a couple of different things to be able to remediate this problem. The first one is that they can go back to their DSPs or whoever they is managing like kind of their ad tech or part of their programmatic supply chain, and say to them, I said to you very explicitly, please don't show my ads on like these types of websites. My ads have appeared there. I need a clawback on for the number of impressions that were displayed. So there's a little bit of revenue right there. 2, creating better block lists so that you don't have this problem in the future. So a little bit of a pause there. The way that we expect to be able to interact with the supply side of the ecosystem is being able to suck in log level data at regular intervals to be able to do this kind of analysis. So the analysis itself is pretty fast flowing. So we would be able to create a return path to those different brands, which would allow them to be able to ingest a new and refreshed block list, or alternatively pick up a better like allow list, being able to like kind of prune like where their spend is going. And also we're now able to like kind of start drawing contextual maps about what ads are shown through the programmatic supply chain and what content, and what is the context of that content. And you could start, conceivably as a brand, start picking up that information and tying that back to the results that you see, and start drawing your own analysis around what type of context, what type of content works best for the type of media that I'm trying to display, or the story that I'm trying to tell. Ultimately, we see this like as a, if we can get TrustList, and it's an F, right? Because we're launching it now. We're launching it as a collaboration with the industry, and we really want the industry to work with us on this. We think, if we had to say, like, what is our definition of winning around this? We want to be able to say to advertisers, if you actively participate in TrustList with the IAB, we are going to create a cleaner internet. And off the back of that cleaner internet, we're going to give you back efficiency gains in how you spend your advertising. We're going to make sure that we can say to each of your brands, such that the brands could go back to their governance risk councils or directors, whoever is like kind of, in charge of that element of their business, and say, we have done everything that we possibly can to ensure that our brand and how our brand is portrayed in the media is safe, and we have taken the appropriate steps around it. And also that we can start like kind of strengthening up what our ROI is for the investment that we put into brands. For publishers, and again, we want to be like, completely transparent about this. If we can start addressing the oversupply of bad destinations, that supply means that overall CPMs should go up, which is great for media owners. Might not be great for brands, but it would be great for media owners. But it is great for brands because they know that what they're buying is a legitimate audience that is not tainted by any kind of brand safety issues, and that their investment that they're making is reasoned and protected. So increased revenue, like with the CPMs, and a little bit of the trust certification that comes with this. And obviously, like, for society, I don't think, again, in the year of our Lord 2025, that anybody can look at digital media and not say that there's a major issue with disinformation and misinformation, right? And the reason why that misinformation and disinformation is being disseminated is because there's a profit motive to do so right now. In many cases, Chris may talk about this, in broader detail, but there's a driver around that. And if we can defund that process, that makes it better for society as a whole, which creates a stronger media ecosystem. And generally improve trust, right? So that's kind of, I'm moving super quickly, so just so that I know that everybody gets a chance to yap away. But that's kind of where we're ready to go. We're ready to move from pilot to scale. We think that this is a pretty interesting low-risk opportunity for brands, agencies, and media owners to work together to create a cleaner internet. We'd really want to work with the industry as a whole. As I said, this is an open source foundation which we're in the process of finalizing, as well as like setting up the not-for-profit body to be able to govern and like distribute this kind of the solution, all in partnership with the IAB. And our ambition is simple and clear. It's like, stop the waste, stop funding disinformation, start supporting quality media. And if anybody wants to work with us, we'd be very keen to have that discussion. It's super easy as a process, low impact, highly secure. And that, Chris, is my story.
Great. Can you click to my first slide, please, Geoff? Well, that is confusing having two Chris's on this call, so I have to pause before I work out who you're talking to. Hi, everybody. So what I want to do is I want to just add a little bit of context as to where TrustList comes from and what it forms part of. So Geoff has spoken quite a lot about the benefits to brands and to a cleaner media ecosystem. What I want to talk a little bit about is kind of more than a media ecosystem, but our actual information, the integrity of our information ecosystem, and why TrustList and your potential contribution to it is going to be so important. Can you click, Geoff? So just a little bit about Code for Africa to kind of contextualize, why we are so concerned with issues of what we're calling fake news now, but which is of course a term that isn't in use anymore, but I'll get to that in a moment. So Code for Africa, we work in about 26 African countries. We have 140 full-time staff who are based in those countries. And yeah, I'd say that of those 140 staff, probably about 100 are devoted to addressing the problems of info integrity and disinformation. So we do a lot of other things around. We have a drone network. We have a sensors network, which uses air and water quality sensors to create data for communities to address issues of climate and the environment. But the real thrust of what we look at is disinformation. Geoff, next slide, please. So, the way we think about information disorder is it comes from the kind of original description of it, which is around misinformation, disinformation, and malinformation. And I think probably everybody has understood by now that the term fake news is a very imprecise one, and that information manipulation and interference in our info ecosystem is a very complex problem, and it's there's so many bad actors contributing to breaking down the trust in all kinds of institutions, from media to business to government and so on. And what we've kind of looked at in our work across Africa is the kind of profit motive behind this. About what is the intent behind the interference in our information ecosystem? Why are people what do they benefit from breaking down trust? Next one, Geoff. So at Code for Africa, we do this in 4 ways, and I'm going to go through this ways just to kind of give you an idea of the overall scope and complexity of the problem of info manipulation. The first way we do that is the kind of conventional fact-checking way. So at Code for Africa, we have a company called PesaCheck, which is the biggest fact-checking organization in Africa, and it's Meta's 4th biggest fact-checking partner globally. And that does the conventional, like whack-a-troll, whack-a-mole kind of fact-checking. I think we have something like 5 million bits of information taken down or marked as disinformation on Facebook every year, for example. We also TikTok's only African fact-checking partner, I think, and that's going to be important when I talk a little bit later about the kind of stats around where South Africans get their information. The second way we do this is that we have an investigative lab, which is made up of data analysts, data scientists, forensics investigators from places like KPMG. And what they do is that they do the kind of social media listening and the kind of follow the money investigations to understand how the disinformation environment operates across Africa. And they do that in all kinds of ways, from looking at monitoring terrorism, hate speech, climate denialism, and so on. And what they do is they expose the networks behind disinformation, and also the networks that constitute disinformation networks. And that, again, is going to be important for how we talk about and how we think about TrustList. The third way we do it is that we monitor kind of narratives in the information sphere across Africa. We do that for 27 countries. And we use a kind of a machine learning AI platform called Civic Signal to kind of understand how disinformation enters digital media across Africa. I think we monitor something like 5,500 news sites in Africa to see kind of, how does that journey go from social media into mainstream media of a particular kind of weaponized narrative. And then the fourth piece is what TrustList is part of, because what we've understood is that, it's all those other things we do there, the fact checking of thousands and thousands of pieces of misinformation, the deep dive investigations, the exposing of kind of state-funded disinformation networks across Africa and so on. All that is really just kind of putting a band-aid on the problem. What we really need to do is to actually attack the business model of disinformation, which is where TrustList comes in. Geoff spoke a lot about how it can benefit the business sense advertisers, but what I want to talk a little bit about is how it can benefit society as well. Next, Geoff. So what we realized in our work is that misinformation, disinformation, and malinformation, and also what is now called FIMI, which is a European standard term for foreign information manipulation and interference, because obviously a lot of what we do is monitor Russia, China, the US, and so on, in terms of how they try and influence our local information ecosystems. They're not, and you always get people saying, what we need to do is we need to make the consumers of this information smarter. They need to be able to spot misinformation more easily, but not fall for it so easily. But we think that's kind of like victim blaming. And in fact, it's not a media literacy problem, this information. What it is it's an economy, and it's a massively profitable economy. What we need is we need to expose the economy to the light. So we look at disinformation as organized crime. We don't think of it as, political kind of scams. All those things are just subsets of what it is, which is crime. Next one, Geoff. I don't want to get into too much detail about how we kind of monitor this and analyze it. But one of the things we do is that we fund and write the Reuters Institute's Digital News Report, which is an annual report into the state of news. I think it's in about 48 countries in the world. Sorry, Geoff, just stay on the front page. Thank you. And we did this for 4 African countries. I'm gonna take you through some of the findings, but these findings are from the one that's only been released on the 23rd of June, when we're having the Africa launch of this report. So it is embargoed. So if you don't mind, please don't share the kind of slides or any of the stats until we officially release it. Next, Geoff. So just some of the top line findings for the one that's coming out in a couple of weeks. In South Africa, trust in news has gone down 2 percentage points from last year. So we're at 55%. But the global average for trust in news is actually 40%. And that's gone down 6 percentage points since 2022. So South Africa is, in fact, the South African news environment is the 5th most trusted environment of the 48 markets that we look at, which for me isn't I mean, in one sense, it's a positive thing. Of course, we still have quite a high level of trust in our news overall, but we are going down from a high of 61%, and I think this is an opportunity for us here. I mean, we have a moment here where we can attempt to reverse what is happening all over the world. We don't want to hit that 40% global average. We want to try and keep South African news trust up, and all the benefits of that, are too many to kind of detail, but to kind of encapsulate it. A trusted news is good for democracy. If people know where to go to find trusted information, they are much more resilient when it comes to the other platforms where they can find what we used to call fake news, which is such a great term. We don't actually want to lose it. So for me, this is a moment where we need to inject something like TrustList into that information environment. Next, Geoff. These are definitely embargoed, please. So this is the list of trusted news organizations. Well, it's a list of news organizations that I chose for us to analyze in terms of how are they trusted. So it's not an exhaustive list. We'll see that News 24 is at 81%. Is still really, really trusted. Sorry, my headphones are breaking. Just give me a moment here. News 24 is still a highly trusted news organization, as is ENCA, and so on. But you'll notice for every single one of those news organizations, they are dropping in trust. Not one has gone up. The daily sign has no change, but everything else is dropping, not dramatically, but it's a path. And that's something we really, really need to keep an eye on. Next one, Geoff. And this for me is one of the kind of killer slides. One of the questions they ask is, what proportion, or rather, one of the questions to ask is, how concerned are you about real and fake when it comes to online news? 58% of people asked are concerned about what is real and what is fake on the internet. But interestingly, the African countries we look at, that's much, much higher than anywhere else. So South Africa is super high at 73% of the people we ask are worried about being able to tell what's real and what's a lie. Nigeria is even higher at 84%. The poor US is also pretty high at 73%, same as us. So yeah, what we have here is a market where we have two things happening at once. Our readers of digital news trust digital news sites, but at the same time, they're really, really scared about being able to tell the difference between real and fake. And that's why they're cleaving to those brands, perhaps. And that's why something like, that's why it's not just the fact that we're losing 40% of our spend, our advertising spend to bad made for advertising websites, some case fake news websites. It's not just that, it's the fact that we are allowing them to muddy up, to be a noise in our information ecosystem, which detracts from the good work that the real news organizations are doing. Next one, Geoff. And just kind of an interesting look at where news consumption is going. So in South Africa, it's Facebook and TikTok largely, but also when we look at where South Africans are showing concern about fake news, it's on platforms like TikTok as well. Like I think we're the highest in the world in terms of worrying about misinformation on TikTok. So, that whole kind of confluence of things means that, right now we have a moment where we can try and build on trust and try and, make our information ecosystem an environment where people can trust brands and trust news organizations because they kind of have an understanding of what is real and what isn't. And that's what we're trying to work towards with TrustList. Next one, Geoff. I don't want to go into this too much, but just to kind of like show you how South Africa, how the African countries, except for Morocco, which is an outlier, are pretty much in the forefront of news users that still trust news. Next one, Geoff. So thanks very much. I just wanted to give you a kind of a, sort of a snapshot of how large this problem is. We don't expect that TrustList is the answer, of course, nobody's saying that, but it's part of a kind of a whole network of solutions that have to work together, with the outcome being that, we're working in an information ecosystem where there are rules and where we can, build trust rather than allow people to break it down. That's what's important about it for me.
Thanks, you, Chris. Yeah, much appreciated, Chris and Geoff. Thank you very, very much for these insights. And I know both of you are incredibly ill, so well done on trying to deliver such technical and groundbreaking material in, as the best as possible without trying to turn your camera off and run away on the side to blow your nose. But thank you guys very much for all those insights. It's as you mentioned now, Chris, it's not necessarily the only solution, but at least something can be done if the industry comes together. This is a real problem and it does require collaboration. And so because we're running super short on time, I'm going to get diving straight into our panel discussion. And I'd like to have all of our speakers back, Geoff, Chris, but I'd like to welcome Adrian Naidoo, the MD of Mindshare South Africa, who's obviously a part of YPP. He brings a comprehensive range of experience in his role, including background in strategy and digital innovation, AI and consulting. He defines innovation of the apex of where technology and humanity intersect. And beyond that, he believes that we need to move to a world of augmented intelligence where we leverage AI to augment human ingenuity. As a digital explorer, his insights are thought-provoking and valuable, and he brings those here for us today. And Adrian, I want to spotlight you because we haven't had a chance to chat yet. Obviously, a lot of technical material being shared. You're one of the agencies involved in the space, taking this environment forward for brands who seem to really trust their media agencies to deliver the best digitally. And so from your agency perspective, how critical is a tool like TrustList in enabling you and your team, and as honestly as you can, give us that insight, you and your team to make more informed media buying decisions, especially given all these challenges we know of about brand safety and performance so far? Good morning.
Thanks, Danilo. How much time have we got? No, I'm joking. And thanks for calling me an expert. I don't know if I'd call myself an expert, but it's nice to be called an expert. And thanks, Chris and Geoff, for taking us through some really, really encouraging work. I suppose when we look at the consumer ecosystem overall, and I think there were some really good things that were touched on in the document. What does this world look like for advertisers? What does it look like for society? What does it look like for consumers? And what does it look like for media agencies? So for me, when we start to consider the tools that we've got available to us, and of course the investment that our clients trust us with, ultimately our goal is to make sure that we are doing the best that we can do to ensure that we're delivering the right ROI for that investment in the right environments. To the point that Geoff was making, if the environments that we're seeing are being troubled by things like where our placements are being placed in incorrect or unsafe environments, of course that has an impact on how we deliver for our clients. The reality, however, is we do invest a lot into technology. We do invest a lot into brand safety mechanisms, as well as ensuring that we are trying to place our clients' investments in the right places. I suppose to the point that Geoff was making, there are a lot of sites out there. There is a lot of technology out there, and often it's difficult to track it. When it comes to something like TrustList specifically, this will be crucial for any agency or any advertiser to start investing in order for us to start putting our clients in the right spaces. We've seen on many, many instances, even when brand safety, and I'm not speaking specifically for WPP, I'm speaking across the industry, we have seen unsafe brand environments for our clients. And it's really important that we start to figure out what that means. I suppose the other thing that I would like to just touch on very quickly is when we look at trust from a societal perspective, and I really like what Chris was taking us through in terms of what does trust in the news environment look like. There's another really important piece of work called the Edelman Trust Barometer, which asks consumers, where are their existential fears coming from going forward? And one of the key existential societal fears is misinformation and fake news. So we, as advertisers, we need to be aware of this, and we need to be aware of what are the right environments that our consumers are trusting, where we can drive better outcomes for our clients.
Sure, Adrian. I mean, like you mentioned something super important there, but it's also, I think in my mind, thinking about how brands are so stretched across digital platforms and technologies and performance and KPIs and ROI, it just feels like another thing to add on top of it. So maybe, Geoff, if I can turn the mic to you, this clearly is important for not only consumers, it's not only important for brands, for brand safety, it's not only important for stopping to fund sort of misinformation on the internet, but there must be something that we can do, actionable, like something right now a step that I can take as a marketer to kind of improve that programmatic spend buying in any case. Because like you said, it's wasted expenditure and it's funding sort of fake news on the internet. There must be one actionable I can start with. Like where's that place I begin? What's that one actionable step I can take as a marketer to improve brand safety, spend less, obviously on things that don't perform, and improve my hygiene using TrustList?
I mean, look, so there are two things, like one that's kind of a tier, the tier answer on that is like your first step is you call us, we come and help you, which is like that's bullshit. Like the first step that you do is you actually have to look at your own data. Like the reality about the stuff is that any brand that is buying at scale has a vast trove of information at their fingertips. Whether they choose to engage with it or not is kind of up to them. And what we're urging folks to do is actually to lean into this process. So spend the time, do the basic audits yourself. Like, it is an achievable goal for you to be able to say, take the, pull a report from whatever your programmatic supply chain vendor is, and say, okay, of the top 1,000 destinations that I went, that my ads showed up on, what were they like? What, were these real? What are the underlying stats around it? How much of my display in a given campaign or a given period of time went to fat head versus long tail? How do we start building a framework for ourselves to be able to identify what is good and what is bad, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And actually start doing the work around this. Because I mean, that is the truth, is that brands make the investments, they work with their partners. Their partners are under incredible revenue pressure themselves. So the brands are always super schnupp about how much money they're investing with folks like WPP, because they think of, they're not getting the value out of it. They don't see WPP's margin under pressure. They just want the results. So there's an education loop that has to happen here, which says that having a technology does not solve this. Like, tech by itself does not solve it. Like, if you're serious about the problem, you lean into the problem and you start identifying it and you start doing what you need to do to fix it. And
I mean, the reality is obviously that this
doesn't solve it. Like, spending
correct,
the time actually starts, that's the investment that you need to start seeing.
Yeah, correct. I mean, but obviously, like you said, it starts at the top. Brands need to obviously decide whether you care about this, does it matter to you or not? And then once you've decided that it is, think about these frameworks and infrastructure. But then if you are, as South Africa is, largely working with partners to deliver, I'm assuming there's an entire operational exercise to be done structurally, Adrian, within agency, media buying platforms, to try and really integrate something like this. What processes, systems, team structures need to change to prepare for a world that is trying to adapt to better brand trust in this online space?
Yeah. Look, broadly speaking, I think as agencies and really across the board as industry, for brand and for agencies who are operating on behalf of brands, I think we're all aware of what are the risks that come with brand safety, and we all know what we need to do from a brand safety perspective. I think when it comes to technologies like this, it's understanding how will the technology improve the way in which we deliver. And I think one of the key things that I really pulled out of what Geoff was saying was higher CPMs. Now, higher CPMs, to Jeff's point, can come across to look like something that we're not optimizing from a performance perspective. The reality, however, is if we've got higher CPMs with better quality audiences that are delivering higher click-through rates and better engagement, then we're having a different conversation. So the idea here is to start considering what is the impact of the technology, how are our teams trained on that impact, and how are we using that in strategies to deliver better outcomes for our clients. I don't think absorbing the technology or integrating the technology is the hard bit. It's the explanation of the outcome of the technology for the clients.
I mean, I don't want to be that guy, but it does sound like it's seeing a lot of claps of hands and our reactions from our audience as well. So I'm sure all the account managers are going, thank you. It's about time that somebody helped us figure this out. But it does sound like it's a brand marketer's duty to decide that not all impressions are equal, and that ultimately sometimes you want to spend your money wisely, which will mean more expensive sort of CPMs, but sort of higher return on your investment from like a real audience perspective. And like these things all impact each other. There's a big education exercise to be done, but it is our job. We are considered partners to brands in South Africa to deliver those. And that education exercise needs to happen, which kind of brings me to you, Chris. I think you can take a stab at this one about partnerships and collaboration. This sounds like this cannot be done by just a brand or just technology or just agency partners. This feels like we need everybody to build enough momentum and a good enough ecosystem to deliver. Can we create enough momentum to make this a reality, to be effective? Do we need partnerships to take this process forward? And how do we play to secure a safer digital ecosystem, while still proving results?
Yeah, well, we do 100% need partnerships and collaborations. I mean, first of all, it's not just a South African problem, this, right? So, a lot of the made for advertising sites are spun up, all around the world, and they all have different ambitions, right? Different targets. Revenue certainly for many, but also, quite a lot of this is being used to fund terrorist activity, for example. human trafficking, and so on. So, it has to be a partnership and a collaborative endeavor. But also just within the South African system itself, brand safety should equate to better revenue for news organizations as well. You need those two things to work together. And I'm not just thinking of news organizations like the traditional ones we're thinking of. I mean, even, news influencers, anybody who's involved in the news landscape needs to be, we need to understand whether that person or organization is contributing to truth or contributing to disinformation. And I think that's why it's going to have to be an absolute partnership between all the parties concerned.
And it's not just that, it's also in an environment that's highly competitive, where everybody's fighting for space and proving results and everyone's jobs are on the line, to also want to care enough about safety in that environment. Geoff, yes, last thought.
So listen, so just a key one, like South Africa and largely the IAB is unique for a number of different reasons. Like South Africa is unique because we're a complicated country with like a complicated past. But we're also unique because we find really good solutions to these complicated environments, right? South Africa is one of the few countries in the world that actually has a digital currency that is used, where the IAB actually drives like kind of this talk about like what is a consistent measure between publishers and how do we all engage. When you're to your point around partnership, my vision around this, well, our vision around this, our vision around this really is like how do we work together as an industry through an industry body to create a low cost or a lowest possible cost solution for something that is costing quite a lot of money for a number of different providers, that isn't providing a great outcome for media owners. So how can we collaborate together? How can we share information in a way that is trusted, is like secure, that isn't like competitive, and ensures that we are doing a public service. We are literally cleaning the internet collectively, rather than trying to inject some kind of revenue generating tool somewhere along the line to add more tax into, like nobody in this, I bet you nobody on this call enjoys paying tax, right? And that's what these things are. Like ultimately, each piece of inefficiency that comes through is a tax on the revenue streams of everybody who is participating in this process, but it's also a tax on the consumer, right? Because that cost of inefficiency, the brand has to cover. That cost of inefficiency gets passed on to the consumer in higher prices. So notionally, like, the overall mission around this should be one which says, can we collaborate together in a managed environment to be able to create an industry-wide solution that lowers costs for everyone, gives us the outcomes that we want to do.
Geoff, thank you. That was a really good insight to wrap up the discussion. I feel like we need whiskey and many roundtable discussions, because this does feel like one of those chats that it needs to be had a lot and with the right people in the room. And this is why the IAB is such an incredible space, to be able to tackle these things at scale with collaboration. So I think Nick Grubb's message in the chat, I think, can be our final little takeaway. It says, thank you, Geoff and Chris, and therefore to Adrian as well. Great to see this idea come to life. It is critically important initiative. Count all the Kagiso Media titles in. We'll be in touch to formalize as soon as possible. They're looking at more partners and media publishers and things in on the conversation, agencies to understand its impact, and more brand marketers understanding the importance of brand safety online. I'm sure we can build a better industry for everybody. Much like politics, we can complain as much as we want about how unsafe the internet is or how governments don't perform, but we can still work together to vote and choose people and be part of constituencies and be part of the solution, or continue to moan in the background about how terrible the situation is. Let's be on the side of good politics. Chris, Geoff, Adrian, thank you for your time this afternoon and this morning. We really appreciate you guys giving of your energy to the Insight series. Until we meet again, I'm sure, a really, really interesting insights today, very much focused on our important publisher partners here at the IAB. And I'm very much looking forward to seeing sort of what you guys have to say in the chat and in the conversations that I'm sure will ensue on LinkedIn. Please do reach out to our speakers, engage the conversation, and to the IAB as well. And a big thank you to all of our sponsors who help us bring the IAB Insight series to life. It really, really is an honor to do this program with you all and to bring these to life. We do have another session coming up in a couple of weeks' time, so I hope that you guys are looking forward to that as well. We hope that this webinar has provided you with some actionable strategies to maximize your ROI and bolster the South African digital ecosystem. Remember that the recording of the session will be uploaded onto the IAB portal for members if you are a member, and please do explore the launch of TrustList South Africa. We're looking forward to seeing how it can help you reclaim your budgets from wasteful spend, and we look forward to seeing you at the next Insight series. Stay close to your emails. Have a lovely morning and a good weekend ahead. Ciao, ciao.